Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today we're talking with Kevin Palmieri, CSO, founder and host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 2,500 episodes reaching over 1 million people. He believes in a heart-driven but direct approach to holistic self-improvement. I'm super excited about this because I'm a big believer in self-improvement, and I think it's especially important for entrepreneurs. So with that, welcome, Kevin, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Brett, thank you so very much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'd be lying or misspeaking if I didn't correct. We have 1,750 episodes.
Oh.
In total, I've been on like 900 other podcasts, so I have 20-something hundred under my belt, but we have done 1,750.
Gotcha. So for your show, 1,750, personally, 2,500. Yeah. That's still a lot.
I just want to make, I don't want anybody to go search it and say, interesting, I think Kev lied. We're missing some episodes here.
They can blame me. I was the one who had the wrong information. So, look, I know that you're going to be sharing some amazing tips with us, but you have a really inspiring personal story and background. So I was hoping to start with that. Can you take us back to your 20s and share your story?
Yeah, so just for context, I grew up without a dad. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. Didn't like school, didn't want to learn, so I decided not to go to college. Worked every job under the sun trying to make money for myself and figure out how to provide for myself. Gas station, personal trainer, truck driver, forklift operator, cleaned bathrooms and floors at a hospital, on-call firefighter for a short time, construction, all sorts of different stuff. But in my early 20s, I got a very unique opportunity in an industry called weatherization. So I worked for a company, and it was our job to go into large buildings, usually schools, and retrofit the buildings to make them more energy efficient. Since I was working on state contracts, I was making anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour.
Wow.
Brett, when that happened, when I got that job, I was like, this is it, right? Money has been a huge thing for me. I grew up without money. I have money now. I'm going to be the happiest person on the planet. So if you were to look at me from the outside looking in when I was 25, you would see a young man who has a high-paying job. I was in the best shape of my life because I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show. My girlfriend was a model. I had a sports car. I had a new apartment. Everything looked amazing. Mm-hmm. But internally, I was super self-conscious. I was very insecure. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was a shell of the person that I probably looked like. So my initial rock bottom was when my girlfriend left me. She left me because I was struggling so bad with my own life that I was unable to pour into hers. And that was the right decision. She did the right thing. And I remember thinking, who could possibly love this version of Kev? I just feel broken, and I feel just bruised, and I feel like there's a dark cloud everywhere I go. Who's ever going to love this version? As much as I'd love to say that is when I went all in on self-improvement, that is not the case, Brett. I convinced myself that I just didn't make enough money yet. Maybe I just haven't crossed the threshold of the amount of money that will bring me the happiness that I so desire. So let me go do that. So now I'm single, and I proceeded to spend the next 10 months living on the road, grinding my face off, trying to make as much money as humanly possible. A lot of our contracts were in other states, so I was living in hotels for just weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. Get to the end of the year. I open up my final pay stub of the year. And just for context, I was standing at my kitchen table because I didn't have any chairs, because my ex-girlfriend took the chairs because they were hers, and I was just never home, so I never bought new ones. That's how much I was away. I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And I had another one of those moments where my expectations of how I was going to feel were not met by the actuality of how I felt. Mm-hmm. In that moment, this was 2017, in that moment, I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. I have no idea why I do any of the things I do. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So in 2017, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. I wanted to have cool conversations with cool people. I fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I've already reached the pinnacle of what I'm going to accomplish here, and I'm not willing to do what it takes to get there again. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job sites early, showing up late. I am no longer the model employee I once was. And it all culminated in me just really, really struggling with my mental health. Every time I'd pack my bag and get ready to leave, I'd get this empty pit in my stomach. I'd be super anxious, super sad. And eventually I woke up in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is 6 hours away from where I lived. My alarm clock went off at 5:15, 5:30. I sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed, and I was lacing up my work boots as I had done 1,000 times before. But that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one is saying, Kev, I know you don't like this job, but you're never going to get another opportunity like this. You're not even supposed to be here. You got lucky. Do not make a mistake here. Mm-hmm. If you did work up the courage to potentially leave this job, what would your friends think? I get a lot of significance from being the successful one in my friend group. What would your family think? I make more money than anybody in my family ever has. And the loudest one for me was, is the plan B going to be podcasting? That's what we're going to do? We're going to leave this steady career and we're going to do this podcasting thing full time? And it was in that moment, Brett, where I thought to myself, well, if I just take my life, I'll take all my problems with me, and I won't have to worry about any of this. Courageously, I texted one of my friends, who's now my business partner, the co-host, Alan, and I explained to him what was going on. I said, hey, man, I'm having a day, and I'm having these dark feelings and these dark thoughts, and I don't know what to do. And he said many things because he's long-winded, but the thing I remember the most was, Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So I ended up leaving my job 3 or 4 months later, partnering up with him, and then becoming a full-time, very broke entrepreneur / podcaster trying to figure this out. And that was in 2018. So I've been a full-time podcaster, business owner for the last 6 years, and now we're, quote unquote, we look successful, even though we're always dealing with stuff behind the scenes that most people don't see.
Of course. I've likened the idea of being an entrepreneur as to being a firefighter. I mean, all we are is professional problem solvers. Yeah. From the outside, it appears as though everything looks good. From the inside, you're like, okay, there's an issue, fix that in order to keep things moving forward. Yeah. So, I mean, it can be a labor of love for sure, but it's definitely a challenge. That's fascinating. And good for you that, you were able to find the thing that you were passionate about and have that reinvigorate you and everything else. And good on your friend too to give you the good advice. I think it's important that we all have somebody in our lives that we can count on in that way, and we know if we need somebody to talk to or whatever, they're there. So it sounds like you sort of went on this journey of becoming really self-aware throughout this process. Do you think that that's the key to start any kind of change in life?
I think identifying where you are is the best way to figure out how to get to where you want to get to. But self-awareness is hard because I think oftentimes when we're trying to become more self-aware, we look at today, yesterday, last week, last month, when the reasons we are who we are, a lot of them are from years and decades prior. So it was that. One of the best things I ever did is I went to therapy.
Okay.
I went to therapy and I was terrified, and I was like, I'm going to cry, and this person's going to judge me. I cried, but the person didn't judge me, so that was a win. And I just learned a lot about how not having a dad around affected me, and growing up without money affected me, and that type of stuff. That helped me so much because then you're looking back and you realize that almost every decision you've ever made has led you to who you are today, and that has become your patterning. Mm-hmm. My patterning, Brett, is not good enough, not smart enough, defective. I'm not good enough, and I'm most likely going to get left behind. I'm not smart enough, and I most likely will not be able to add value to your audience. And I am defective. And if somebody finds out that I'm defective, they're not going to love me anymore. Those are my big 3 things.
Wow.
So when I became aware of that, I understood that the way for me to grow is to continue to reflect on the things I've been through, but to try to continue to do the things that scare me. Because that's the only way I'm going to grow. I'm going to grow through saying, I'm afraid I'm not going to be good enough for Brett, but let me try to prove myself wrong. And then when it goes well, I have recent and relevant proof that I can do it again. So in many ways, I think self-awareness saved my life. I really, really, really do. I always liken it to, if you're going to do a road trip across, let's just say you're in the U.S. We're going to go across the U.S., East Coast to West Coast, and you have no awareness about how your vehicle works. If you encounter any problems on your route, you are in trouble.
Yeah.
Why are we avoiding the awareness of who we are as humans? That's always my thought. When you're aware, you're in control. And when you're in control, you can create the results you want in your life over time, obviously. So yes, long-winded way of saying self-awareness is everything. Obviously, I'm super passionate about it because it has changed my life in ways that I just didn't expect or I was unable to imagine.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it sounds like, as you talk about it, one of the things that I'm hearing is sort of an undercurrent of all this is vulnerability, right? I mean, it's the idea that in order to be self-aware, or in order to address things that might be issues, the first thing you have to do is be willing to see and admit and come to terms with the fact that there's something there, and that requires a certain strength. So do you think vulnerability is a key component in the whole process with this?
Yeah, I think vulnerability and self-honesty are really connected. I think one of the reasons a lot of us struggle with vulnerability is because we haven't been honest with ourselves yet. It's really hard to be vulnerable with someone else if you haven't explored those weird feelings with yourself yet. I always talk about, because in my story, a lot of people will say, well, it was so vulnerable of you to reach out to Alan. And the truth of the matter is it really wasn't. Because Alan and I had so many deep talks up to that point. When people mention that, I say, one of the things for me is I built the umbrella long before the thunderstorm ever started. And that's always the advice I give is, if life is easy for you right now and you're not struggling, find a person to practice being vulnerable with, because you don't know when you might eventually need that later.
Yeah.
I think it's a very important component to self-honesty. And it's the biggest thing in relationships. I remember my wife, when she was just my girlfriend, we are both very into growth. And we watched a documentary, I think it was called The Mask of Masculinity.
Okay.
And it was all about vulnerability. And I learned so much about the fact that I don't know, I thought I was supposed to be a hardened man who doesn't feel any emotions. I couldn't tell you how many times I've cried to my wife on my wife's shoulder in bed or whatever. It's been very, very life-changing. And I think that it can be scary, but the reframe for me has always been, if you're scared to do it and then you do it, that makes you brave, not weak. If you're scared to do it and then you don't do it because you're scared, that means that we have to work on courage. So being vulnerable is not a weakness, it's a strength. If it was a weakness, it would be way easier and it'd just be like, yeah, nobody's going to do that because it doesn't make any sense. It's very valuable. It's a very valuable thing to have.
Yeah, it'd be a lot more popular if it were easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is true. And I think that, society helps create that norm where, as a man, you feel as though there's something wrong or that externally it makes you look weak. But I've experienced the same thing. I mean, when somebody has had the strength of character, even to admit when they're wrong or say they're sorry or whatever, I never viewed that as, oh, look, this person's weak. They are admitting they made a mistake. It's the total opposite. Yeah. I admire those people because it's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that's been easy for me. And I'll tell you, one of the issues that I struggled with myself in terms of the podcast that I started and some of the things that I've done to grow an audience and connect with people is the vulnerability piece. I always believed as an entrepreneur that my job was to have all the answers, right? I'm the answer guy because I'm running a business. And so if there's a marketing problem or there's this problem or that, I need to have all those answers. And I can never say I don't know. I can never say, well, I don't know. That's something I'm not good at. I need to look that up or figure that out. And what I realized is people can't connect with you if all you ever show is the greatest parts of yourself, and it just feels more like a brag fest and an untouchable, sort of unreal type of person. Whereas when you expose vulnerability, everybody has it. So the fact of the matter is, when you admit that you were wrong, you admit that there's things that you don't know or things that you struggle with. I think, those kinds of stories are the ones that people can relate to and feel closer to you because of that. So I 100% am on board with that and believe that to be the case, because I think it's really important. So a lot of people have fears. A lot of people struggle with confidence, especially in today's world. I mean, we live in a social media world where everybody's richer, everybody's better looking, everybody's got, more six-pack abs than you do and all that other kind of stuff. What advice can you share for how people can become more confident?
I'll tell you, I used to be in really good shape until I started looking at social media. I was like, well, I'm terrible. I might be the worst. My goodness. One thing that's really helped me is understanding that 50 years ago, if you wanted to see a physical specimen, you had to either watch TV or find them in a magazine. And only the top 1% of whatever, let's just say physiques, hypothetically, made it there. Now, social media is just an algorithm of 1%. Yeah. So that really helps me, is like, I know everybody on here is in world-class shape, but it's just because there's billions of people that have access to this now. That's always helped me. A couple thoughts for confidence. I've heard this quote before, and I think most of us have been lied to when it comes to this. People say if your goals don't scare you, they're just not big enough. I understand what you're saying, and that makes a really good bumper sticker or a really good social media post, but that doesn't speak to the majority of humans who are emotionally driven and are struggling. And I'm not just saying emotionally driven people are struggling, but anybody who's struggling with life currently. If I don't believe in myself, the last thing I should do is set a goal that I don't believe in. That is a one-way ticket to sabotaging your self-belief, your self-worth, and the way you look at yourself. So one thing I always say is set smaller goals. I know it's the opposite of what all the confident people are telling you, but I think the confident people don't understand how confident they actually are. Because my business partner was that at the beginning. I've never met somebody as confident as him. He is the most confident human I've ever met. And when we would talk about self-belief, he'd be like, yeah, you just have to believe in yourself more. Ah, thank you. That's the key. Ah, okay. I never thought of that before. But he didn't understand what it was like to have to build belief.
Yeah.
So one thing is, think of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much self-belief do you currently have? Okay, let's say it's a 2 out of 10. No worries. Been there. Instead of setting a level 10 goal, let's set a level 3 goal. So instead of saying, I'm going to go to the gym 7 times this week, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow for 5 minutes and see what happens. Awesome. And then we set another goal. I'm going to go tomorrow for 10 minutes and see what happens. Awesome. You're going to build momentum. I think confidence is a really good word for certainty. How confident am I that I can jump on here and add value on a podcast? I've done it a lot of times, so I'm fairly certain it'll go well. Really, that's all it is. I think for a lot of us, confidence comes from experience.
Yeah.
But we don't start the experience because we don't believe in the outcome enough, so we got to break the outcome down. So that's one thing. I always talk about recent and relevant proof. Right? What's the most recent and relevant proof that shows you that you can actually do what you're afraid to do? That's a big one. Another one is setting and keeping small promises to yourself. My business partner has a really good quote. If you had a friend who had broken as many promises to you as you have broken to yourself, how much would you value that friendship? It's like, okay, that's a really good point. So that's another one. But I think the simplest one really is figure out what scares you. Have an honest conversation with yourself about what you can chunk that down into. And then start practicing those habits. In the very beginning, I started tracking habits. So I'd have 5 habits a day. One of those habits was fear chasing. And the definition of fear chasing is finding something that scares you and intentionally going out of your way to do it. Every time I did it, I'd write it down, I'd give myself a check mark, and I'd keep a running tally of how many times I fear chased. And as I did that more and more and more, I became more confident through essentially exposure therapy. Mm-hmm. So that is the advice I would give when it comes to confidence and belief. And then last thing, most of the people that you see on social media are not nearly as fulfilled as you think they are. I've met many of them.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that from a negative frame of talking trash about them. I was very surprised when I saw behind the scenes and realized, oh my goodness, you are not your social media profile. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I just throw that out there for anybody who might think that you're missing something or whatever it may be. Social media is just a catered, cultivated highlight reel. It's entertainment. It's not real life.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. One of the things that always strikes me about that is, you see rampant levels of depression, anxiety, all these other things. And sometimes it's from these people that are very young and, successful because they have this giant following or whatever. But I always think of it like from this perspective. If you are doing something and there's a lack of authenticity, it's performative. So you're putting on a show and the show gets old. It gets very hard to perpetuate that if it isn't authentic to who you are. I know somebody through somebody, and obviously I'm not going to reveal who they are, but their family has a YouTube channel that's very successful. The kids are not allowed to be in anybody else's photos, anybody else's video. Like if they hang out with their friends, no one's allowed to use their cell phones because they have an image that they've created for this channel, and they're worried if anything got out that tarnished that image, their channel would sink. So to me, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, you're in prison because you basically are limited in terms of who you can be and the image that you always need to project. And so I think one of the keys is to sort of have that authenticity where you, there's at least less of an effort to do it. But to your point, I think, the confidence thing, I love the idea of small wins because I agree with you that the frame of reference that you start with makes a huge difference. I always think of this like, so you're trying to learn arithmetic and you have this AP calculus teacher trying to, well, they've already forgotten what it's like to not understand how to add numbers, right? So they're the wrong person. It's not that they're not good enough, they're too good. But they're just in a totally different mind space where they can't even access back to where you are. And so I think it's really important to recognize that in ourselves. And as you said, if we set things that are incremental, that build our confidence. One of the things about starting a podcast or any other sort of outreach media, whether it's a social media channel or your public speaking or whatever, as you know, is starting is the biggest difficulty because you don't know whether what you've got is valuable. You don't know whether or not you're going to be good at it, and you're not in the beginning. And but until you start, you never get better because it's a skill and you have to develop that skill. When you get on a bike for the first time, you don't ride down the street and start popping wheelies. You fall down, you skin your knee, you get back up and you try it again. You get a little bit further next time. And eventually you learn how to ride a bike because it's a skill. And I think confidence, can be built in the same way if we focus on smaller wins as opposed to things that are going to demoralize us because it's so big that we'll never get there. So I love that. I actually think that's a fantastic advice.
Right. The weird thing about it is when you're learning to ride a bike, I would love to see a graph of correlation between the ability to learn to ride a bike, age to success percentage.
Yeah.
Because when you're young, I don't know how old I was when I learned to ride a bike, but I didn't have an ego yet, so I wasn't worried about falling off and people making fun of me. As you get older and older, that's why it's so hard. If you knew that nobody was going to judge you and nobody was going to make fun of you, it would be way easier to do all these things.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting part, and that's why oftentimes I tell people to try to do stuff behind the scenes. It doesn't have to be public yet. Podcasting, public speaking is a really good example. I was on stage one time. Somebody messaged me after my speech, and they said, I'd love to be a public speaker. And I said, amazing. And this is going to make a lot of sense, we have to get you speaking. We just have to get you speaking. And I said, but not on stage. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone would it be for you to do a Facebook Live right now in front of all of your friends? And they said, that is 10 out of 10 outside my comfort zone. So that makes sense. Fair. On a scale of 0 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone would it be for you to just record a video to yourself and show nobody? And they said, honestly, that's only like a 1 or 2. I said, that might not be enough based on your level of confidence. I said, what about if you record a speech and then send it to me? And they said, that's probably like a 5 out of 10. I said, that's the sweet spot. I said, all right, record a speech, send it to me. I won't show anybody. And then over the next couple days, I got the speech, said, awesome, strong work. Now we have to do whatever a level 5.5 is. But I don't want it to be public because there might be feedback. And we might not be ready for that feedback yet. So start in private, build up to confidence level for public, and then at least you're ready for some potential feedback that you might get.
Yeah, I love that advice. And I think, what you said too about the age is so salient of a point, because when we're young and we don't know any better, we're not looking around to see what other people are thinking, whether they're laughing at us, but we're just doing it because that's what you do. And as you get older, it gets harder to talk to people that you're romantically interested in, because you start to fear rejection. You start to fear failure. When I was a javelin thrower in high school and college, and when I started off in track, I was a sprinter, but I wasn't very good. So my coach, the start of my sophomore year, said, come with me. And he walked me, and I thought, oh no, he's going to walk me over to the long distance guys, because I did cross country for 2 years. Wasn't very good at that either. He brought me over to the throwers, and I thought, wow, this is really weird, but he felt like I had the body of a thrower. So he's like, try this, have these guys teach you how to do the things. And I'll never forget my first day of learning to throw javelin. We were at a home meet, and we had practice, but the girls had a home meet. And so the South Windsor girls, which was another town, a couple towns away, were at our school. And here I am with a javelin in my hand. I got no idea what I'm doing. And there's all these girls all around. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should just wait till tomorrow, because I don't really want anyone to see me look like a fool. And I literally had the conscious thought in my head, if I wait till tomorrow, it's going to take me one more day to get to where I want to be. So no, I don't care. I'm just going to go do it anyway. And I think, to your scale question, right? For me, that wouldn't have been a 10, but it was a 5. I didn't really want to do it, but it wasn't so much that I wasn't willing to do it. So I said, I'm just going to embrace the discomfort here. I'm going to do it. And that will make me better faster. And the next time the South Windsor girls come, I'll be throwing good and feeling good. So, I think that's a cool way to look at it for sure. So another issue that I see a lot of people wrestle with is the idea of finding meaning or purpose. So do you have advice for how someone can find their purpose?
Yeah, this is like the billion, trillion, gazillion dollar question. I don't claim to have the answer, but this is really what's helped me. I believe I've met a lot of people and had the opportunity to study a lot of people. Most people's purpose is usually connected to their pain. And it's usually to help a specific person avoid a specific pain in a specific way, from what I've seen. I think where we get caught up is not the purpose, it's the vehicle. Because if I said to someone, what do you want to do? And they say, it's always, every time I go to the beach, I see so much litter, and there's cigarettes, and there's cans, and there's cups. And I feel like we're really messing up the world. And I feel like I want to make the world a better place. Awesome. That's a great purpose. Awesome. How are you going to do that, and how are you going to make money? And that's where it's like, I could never do that. I'm just saying, in a perfect world, I'd really like that. So my question that I ask people is, if you didn't have to make any money doing it, but it had to be in the service of humanity, what would you like to spend your days doing? Because I think hidden within there is, I don't want you to say sipping margaritas on the beach because that's going to get old and that's most likely not your purpose. But if it has to be in the betterment of humanity, it's most likely solving a problem for something. And taking the money out allows us to look at it from a realistic perspective as a vehicle. So for me, I've always loved helping people. Always, always, always. I was a captain of the baseball team. We used to have camps with little kids. Although I was hungover, I still enjoyed helping the kids. And I've always liked helping. I was coaching people on Snapchat long before I was a podcaster.
Okay.
When my purpose, quote unquote, became realistic was when I found podcasting. Oh, I have a vehicle now. Interesting. Oh, I can have deep talks and people might actually hear it. Oh, it's actually something I might be somewhat decent at. Interesting. There's a way to make money doing this? My goodness. So if anybody out there that's struggling with that, I would really sit with what is the problem you want to solve? Who do you want to solve that problem for? And in what unique, specific way? And then what is a realistic vehicle? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. I've worked with a lot of podcasters who know their purpose, but if they can't figure out how to make what they're doing sustainable, unfortunately the purpose dies. Yeah. Because you have to go do something that's going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Or you can volunteer, right? You don't necessarily have to make it your life's mission to accomplish it, but that's been something that's been very helpful for me and very helpful for many of the people I've talked to behind the scenes. There's questions you can ask yourself. What are you really good at? What have people told you that you're really good at? When you're doing it, you lose track of time. What really makes you sad? What really makes you happy? What would I catch you talking about on a Friday night with your friends? There's a lot of questions you can ask that can reveal it. But I really like the approach of the vehicle because I think the vehicle is where a lot of us get stuck.
Yeah. I think that, that makes sense. It's, in one place or another, I think some people get into a career or get into a job for one reason or another, sometimes just by default. It's the one thing that they landed when they got out of school or when they started applying for jobs or whatever. And sometimes they just end up going on that track, but then it's also really difficult to shift because once you have a certain level of expertise, a certain income level, hard to replicate that doing something else. I mean, we're fortunate in the sense that we live in an age now where you can do a lot of things as a side hustle to sort of test them out and hone your craft, get to a point where then you can go full time with it if it works out. But at the same time, I think that's true. I've heard a lot of people talk about something that they would care about, but if they can't immediately think of a way to monetize it or to replace the income that they've got, it's not really on the table as a consideration. So I think it's important to try to align that and find ways where you can make it all work. So consistency is obviously a big thing. You've been very consistent with your podcast. You've been doing it for years. You have 1,000+ episodes. I know for me, it's one of the things that when I set out to start mine, I said, if I'm going to do one thing, I'm going to be consistent. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to commit to it and I'm going to do it. So let's talk about consistency and never giving up. I know that it's something that has been important to me and it's something I've always tried to do. Why do you think it's so important in trying to achieve anything in life?
I think because the more you do something, the better chances of getting quote unquote lucky. I think that's a big piece of it is we live in a viral world where people want the first thing that they do to go viral and then all these opportunities come. And that's just not realistic for the vast majority of us. That's why it's so unique when things go viral. I always use the splits analogy. So if you came to me and said, Kev, can you do the splits? No, I can't do the splits right now. Okay, cool. If you can do the splits by this time next year, I have $1 million check with your name on it. If I said that to someone, they're most likely going to say, I got to get started. I'm going to do the splits. I'm going to practice every single day for the next 365 days. And the likelihood of you accomplishing the splits goes down as the consistency goes down. So you do it every day, 365. Awesome. You do it 5 times a week. What is it? 260 maybe? Something like that. And then you do it 3 times a week and it's 160. And then you do it once a week and it's 52 reps. You are way more likely to get the goal with 365 reps than you are 52. You might even get the goal early if you do it. You're doing 5 times, 6 times the amount of reps. So that's one big piece. The second big piece is we identify with the behaviors that we practice most consistently. I am a bodybuilder. I say that because I've been going to the gym for 16 years. I am not a hockey player because I am terrible at it and I haven't skated in many, many, many years. As we do something consistently, it becomes part of our identity. And the things that you identify as, it's easier to practice. I think by human nature, we are consistent creatures. It's just a matter of whether or not we're consistent in the right direction. If you hit the drive-thru every day on the way to work and you get a sausage, egg, and cheese and a croissant, that's a consistent behavior that might not necessarily be in alignment with your goals. I love those, so I'm not throwing shade on that. But I don't eat them when I'm dieting because that takes most of my calories for the day. So that's a big piece of it. And then I think the last real big piece is we have things that we do every day. Like our podcast, we do an episode every day. We have monthly meetups where we do these free meetups. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to improve those because we only do them once a month. Mm-hmm. So by the time one comes around, I forget what the last one was like. And it's really hard to improve something that you're only doing once a month. So the thing that you're doing the most consistently is also the thing that you can do with improvement most often. That's a really, really big one. A lot of times people will say, well, how do you become more consistent? What are the things? Public accountability is huge. So in our branding, we say 7 episodes a week. Every single week we'll never miss. I will never miss an episode. It doesn't matter. There will be one out. If I'm in the hospital, I don't care. It'll be out. So it's part of our public image. There's a lot of accountability, public accountability. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things to do is to put your money where your mouth is. So I was struggling with fitness last year. Business had grown a ton. I was overwhelmed. And I was letting myself down. I wasn't up to my own standard. So I had a $100 bill in my office. I went to my wife and I said, I need a favor, babe. And she said, yeah, what do you got? And I gave her the $100 bill. And I said, if I don't go to the gym 7 days in a row, I need you to rip this $100 bill up in front of me. And she said, Kev, there's no way I'm going to do that. And I said, it's already done in my brain. I've just created more pain by not practicing the behavior than the pain that will come from me practicing the behavior. It's already done. I promise. It's going to be fine. But I think we're afraid to put ourselves in those positions. Mm-hmm. I think the pain of not accomplishing the thing has to be greater than the pain of doing the thing in the first place. But obviously you can take that too far, so please run that through the filter. But that's been something that's been really, really helpful. I have so much pain associated with missing an episode. I've never missed an episode in 1,700 and however many episodes. Ooh, you think I'm going to start now? I don't want to start now. I have so much pain associated with it. So the pain is much greater than me staying up for 14 hours to make sure I get a podcast episode done.
I think that's such great advice and such a great way to look at it. I think of it even on a daily basis, right? Back to your idea about hitting the drive-thru for the sausage McMuffin. I always say, like, if you start the day and you eat the donut for breakfast, you're just going to throw the rest of the day away because you've already ruined it, right? If you start the day with the banana and the yogurt or granola or whatever, it makes it a lot easier to then eat a healthier lunch because you're already on a good track. Yeah. And to your point about the podcast, I couldn't agree more. My wife said to me, I do 5, I don't do 7, but I do weekdays. And there are holidays in there. And she, you're going to do on holidays too. I said, yeah, I don't have to shoot it that day, but I'm going to post it because as soon as I miss the first one, as simple as and little as that seems, it destroys the entire thing. As long as it's perfect, I want to keep it perfect. There's so much pressure in a positive way to keep that going because I've committed to myself to do it. I've committed to the audience to do it. And so I think that that's a really, really good point. It's not the idea that, oh, well, if you take a break or something, you deserve a break or whatever. It's you got to build that momentum to a point where you do hold yourself accountable And there's accountability externally as well, because it makes it a lot easier. There's all those forces that push on you to keep you going instead of just letting you fall. If nobody knows or nobody cares, who cares if I cheat today? It won't really matter,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, that's why dieting is so hard. Nobody knows what I eat. I know you're not going to see what I eat. But I think that's a really important piece of it, is understanding that we have kind of like a big three. So there's three things that I'm never allowed to miss, but everything else I miss all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's another important thing, is when it comes to podcasting, when it comes to various WhatsApp groups that I have and clients, those are the big three. Do not miss those. Those are the things I am responsible for. But if something doesn't get posted on social media, not the end of the world. It's not something I'm hyper focused or obsessed with. So picking your big three, I think, is another important thing, because it's really hard to be consistent on everything at the same time.
Yeah, agreed. You can have your list of nice to-dos, but there has to be that core list of stuff that no matter what, that's part of who you are, it's part of what you're going to do. And you have to give yourself enough leeway to understand that if the list is too big, it goes back to your point about the goals. It becomes this thing where it actually starts to eat away at your self-esteem, because you promised yourself you were going to do these 28 things, and there just weren't enough hours realistically in a day. Yeah. So it is important to be realistic about that. So a question I love to ask entrepreneurs and people, podcasters, and everything else is, what's something that you wish you knew earlier? Because I know I've done episodes about that in particular. So what is it for you?
Man. It'll be a deep one. It'll be a deep self-awareness one. I wish I knew how much the fear of disappointing others affected me, especially someone who has so many opportunities to disappoint others on a daily basis. We have a lot of clients in the business, and I have a lot of one-on-one conversations and in direct contact with them. So yeah, I didn't realize there have been times that I have been playing more not to lose than to win. Because my fear is, if I win more, that's more opportunity to let people down. And it kind of has become, it's something I'm working diligently on, but it became a little bit of a bottleneck for a while. Because if I get 10 new clients and I disappoint 2 of them, I'm not thinking of the 8 that are not disappointed. I'm thinking of the 2 that are. That became a little bit of a bottleneck for a time. And again, I focused on self-awareness. Where does this come from? Growing up without a dad, that's a piece of it. Okay, cool. How do we mitigate that? Don't personalize it. It's not about you. So it's something I'm currently working through, but I wish I knew that. And I also wish I knew how much this journey was going to test me internally. I thought it was going to be, learn numbers and learn sales, yes, but I have learned more about Kevin than I have learned about anything else in this entrepreneurial journey, and I wish I knew that going in, because maybe I would have approached it in a different way. But yeah, those 2 things are big for me.
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. We've all got our lists, so no worries there. So let's talk about how you can help people. What programs, what products, what services do you offer, and where can we find them?
So our website is nextleveluniverse.com. That has everything. That has the podcast. Between Alan and I think we have 5 podcasts or 4 podcasts. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. We have one-on-one coaching for business owners. We have group coaching for people looking to get to the next level of their life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationships, financial. And then we also have a really big production company for podcasters. So if you're a podcaster who's sick of doing the work yourself and you need an affordable way to get that work done, we can take care of you with a very high-quality product. But everything's on the website. There's an overwhelming amount of stuff. So maybe you'll find something there that resonates with you. If not, no worries.
Awesome. And my last question that I always have to ask is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
It's impossible to achieve success until you first define it. And I think success for everybody is different. So define success. And what has worked really well for me is breaking that into health, wealth, and love. Success is being the healthiest, wealthiest, most in love version of myself. I do not want to be really good at one thing. So that's my definition, and that definition has become the roadmap. So define what success means to you, not what it means to the world, not what it means to social media, not what it means to your ego, what it means to the most authentic piece of you. That would be my advice.
That's a cool perspective. I love that. Okay, so with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Kevin, for sharing all of your insights and great tips with us. Visit nextleveluniverse.com to find his podcast, his courses, and click on the group coaching for a transformational experience with like-minded and heart-driven individuals committed to getting to the next level of life, love, health, and wealth. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optYOUmize.